Hey everybody, Dave Costello here, founder and CEO of Jetpack Workflow and host of Growing Your Firm podcast. Today's guest is Alyssa Lang. She is the workflow queen. She teaches bookkeepers and accountants how to utilize tech and automation to create better workflows, systems, and processes. As a result, they can run their practice on autopilot, stress less, and save time. This topic is near and dear to my heart, as everybody probably knows that's been listening to us for a while. As a workflow software company, we think about processes a lot. In this interview, we're going to cover a lot of ground. I was telling Alyssa right before the interview, I really want to dig into a specific point she mentioned in the interviewee form submission, which is around creating a team culture around being process driven, which I think is really challenging. It's really overlooked, but critically important if you want to scale your firm. But first, just Alyssa, welcome to the show.
Yay, thank you. By the way, huge fan. I remember when I used to have a regular job and I was bartending, I had to drive really far and I used to listen to the podcast all the time on my drive to kill the time because I'm in LA. So we all know how that works. But I'm so happy. Yeah. I'm super excited to be here. It's not only an honor, but also to be able to kind of sit here and chat together, bounce off of each other, and also others kind of listening in to kind of educate in whatever possible way I possibly can to your audience and for you.
Yeah, amazing. And I'm really excited to dig into the wonderful world of workflow and how to make it more approachable or scalable for a lot of our listeners. You know, for folks not familiar with you or your story, how did you get so interested in workflow? How did you end up as the workflow queen? I'd love to hear a little bit of the backstory.
Yeah. So I actually started out with just doing taxes. I did taxes solo. It was more of a side hustle, let's call it that at first. And then it kind of blew up because as a bartender, I connected with a lot of different people. So my client base kind of grew really fast. And then I stumbled across, I think, talking to my original tax preparer. He talked to me about doing bookkeeping. And I was like, I didn't even think to do bookkeeping. And then I found a program online that I actually took and did that. And I learned how to do bookkeeping and I started to roll it out. And that's when my practice actually started to really take off more because taxes, you only get that recurring revenue once a year versus like bookkeeping, it's very consistent. So that's when at that point I was quit my job. I was very focused in my practice, but that's when I hit a point when I started to really scale was I started to run into the problem of everything is in my brain. I'm trying to remember everything on a piece of paper. I am stressed out. I'm overwhelmed. This is not why I started this, was not to have overwhelm and stress. And so that's when I knew it was time for me to hire, but I didn't know where to start, who to start with, how to bring them on board, how to communicate like my vision with them and everything in between. So during that process, I tried to do a lot of research and whatever I could around systems and processes. But a lot of this wasn't geared towards what we do here in this industry, which a lot of people teach processes and systems around things that have project based where they end. This is never ending for you ever. So it's like you have to have a consistency being on top of your own project management. And that's when I started to look into systems, looking into hiring, and took me, I think, 6 to 8 months trial and error of trying every project management system that I possibly could, trying to figure out how to hire someone. Pretty sure the first hire I ever did was a total fail. And just kind of kept working through it. And I was writing down absolutely everything that I was doing in the whole process, which made it easy for me later when I was trying to support this community and saying, this is where I was at and how I got there. And through my own ups and downs, crying myself to sleep, stress is when I found that like workflows and systems were going to be the game changer for me. And once we started to implement them and actually get them down, we started bringing on team members. I was able to easily outsource and not have to be so involved and actually be able to take the time that I wanted to spend doing things in my life without having that stress.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, to go back to the beginning of the firm, it sounds like you started off by growing very, very quickly. Were those all referrals from folks you knew as being a bartender or from the tax preparer that you were working with, or did you find other marketing avenues to get your client base so quickly?
It was all referrals from the bar that I bartended at like a couple different spots and just chatting with people. They were more like divey. So they were like, you can have real conversations with people. And it was a lot of referrals. I don't think I ever did any marketing, like physical advertising, stuff like that, or pamphlets. It was all just referrals. And I'm very thankful for it.
You know what's amazing? And I don't think we published this interview, so I'm sure you haven't then heard it, but we interviewed a firm owner, or his co-owner, Shane Mason, and he struck a kind of a quasi partnership with a local bar that he would frequent, where he would help patrons do their tax returns, and they set up a little stand for him in the back. And that's how he got his first like X number of clients to let him go full time into the firm. So there might be something to this like bar strategy. Like we've heard it twice in 30 days. It's pretty amazing as a way to of client acquisition. Nobody's talking about it, but now we've heard it twice.
That's really interesting because I've done that before. At a bar that I used to work at, the boss called me and said, "You do taxes now. Can you come over?" We did an intensive day where everyone just came in and did. It's really funny. I didn't realize that there was someone else with the strategy.
It's pretty amazing. I think the macro concept is if there's a place where you know your potential clients are congregating now, whether it's at a bar or it's in an online community or it's at I don't know events. I don't know what's going to go on post pandemic in a virtual reality space. Wherever it is, you can actually provide value there. So you fast forward, you're growing well, but you're kind of trapped in your own firm, and you start developing a process. Just to make this very concrete, what's an example of a process that you put together? Like, what did it look like? Like, what are some of the examples of the steps you put in there? Like, if any sort of illustration there would be great.
Yeah. So a lot of the times what we did was for the month end close part, because that was really hard. I mean, a lot of us struggle from the 1st to the 10th of every month. So I knew if I was going to bring someone on, that was going to be the first thing I was going to outsource. So I did everything in chunks. So yes, did I have systems I already started for myself, but it's a heck of a lot harder to outsource it to someone else if there's lacking information. So I started with generic aspects of creating the month end close process. So that's gathering the statements, making sure everything's ready to go, actually going through and double checking all the bank feeds. So throughout that process, once we started to bring someone on to support me, poor guy was like, there's a hole here, there's a hole here, we got to plug this. And that's why your team can actually support you in building 10 times more of an efficient process, more than you think. And it was good that I didn't let myself say, I need a perfect process before bringing someone on. Instead, I just kind of said, we're figuring this out together. But yeah, so it was each step and phase.
Yeah. And how did you foster, was that almost from day one, or did you do anything to foster that level of trust where your first, or that hire in that case could come to you and saying, hey, there's a gap in the process?
I think that was more just the transparency, approachability. I mean, we all come from a job where maybe we didn't have a good boss or someone who didn't allow you to free think. And to me, I didn't want to be that boss. I wanted to be the one to say, look, if you see something, please don't. It's going to be weird at first because you may not be used to being open with telling your boss, these are the issues that you made. And that up front was just like, if you see anything, you got to let me know. You have to, because if it helps me, it's going to help you, and we're all going to be able to get more done. And that was just creating that from the get-go as soon as they were onboarded.
So you created that almost from the DNA foundationally. Did you ever have a challenge where team members weren't a part of that process DNA? Like, and if so, how would you overcome it?
I think our first hire, but the thing that really didn't work for us for the first hire was a VA who helped me with sending out emails to specific people to kind of do reach outs for the bookkeeping side of things. And she really didn't follow the process. Also, she was managing probably 20 other clients that she was working with. So that was hard. And sometimes it's not about the way that we build in those culture pieces, but it's sometimes about the person on the other end who doesn't know how to effectively disperse their time and just kind of says, I'll do anything, versus like, take a step back. Can you afford to do it right now? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that was our only struggle. Since then, even at Workflow Queen, we have 2 full-time team members and contractors as well. And even our team members, like going back to that, we don't have an issue with them. They are always ready to tell me. Yesterday, I made a mistake on a process that we built out a long time ago. And I literally was like, but it then sparked my team being like, but then there's this thing in it. Now we have it 10 times more down. And I think that that's something from the get-go, just telling your team, it's okay to be honest with me. I'm not scary. I'm not going to bite you.
So you missed, so this is a great example. So did you miss something because you like forgot to check off step 3, or did you miss something because like the contextual information just wasn't there, and then somehow your team realized it and they added it, or you brought it to them and you guys brainstormed how to update it? Is that correct?
Yeah. So essentially what happened was we are going through where we're scheduling out emails that are going to be automated within the next week. And in that process, because we're in what we call a promotion phase, it's really important that we actually segment our list. And a lot of the listeners here, you guys might not know what sequences are, but there are ways to build those in to automate your sales process. But essentially what we do is we get everything ready in advance and we say, okay, where are we going to send these people to? I have a big, what they call like mind map, decision trees, whatever you want to call it, where it helps us to determine, they follow it and say, is it a promo email? Is it an update email? That then comes down to the very bottom that says, this is the ultimate outcome, depending on which way you went in your mind map. So with that, one of my team members came back and said, hey, Alyssa, I'm putting this together, but I'm like really confused by this. And as soon as she said it, I was like, oh my gosh, I put the wrong information, which can then turn into a really bad result for my subscribers. I didn't want that issue to happen. Immediately went into the process, updated it. And then I actually filmed a Loom video for my team, sent it over. And with that, my operations manager came back and said, I have even better way to make this easier next time. And then she therefore like rebutted off me. And just now we have a even more robust system out of just that one mistake.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it's such a good point there that, you, or it was you, then even other team members realized how to improve it, shot the video so you could remember. Like, I think videos and walkthroughs are so impactful. So Loom, LOOM.com. I know there's other tools out there. Whatever you use, shoot the video, add it back into the process as you update it. You mentioned something here that actually for on the Jetpack workflow and us being kind of like workflow nerds, we've never talked about on the podcast, which is mind mapping. And so walk me through your mind mapping process. In this case, it sounds like it was a marketing promotion. Do you bring your team in? Do you recommend mind mapping tools for people to think about their workflows? Like, I'm just curious about that overall tool in your toolkit and how it's been helpful and when you would recommend using it for the listeners.
So for anybody listening who's doing in the bookkeeping accounting industry, the way that you can use these there's a lot of times that you bring people on your team that may not have maybe the tax side of things. Maybe they don't have that expertise where they may not know what's indicated as an asset or not, right? There's rules, there's pieces of that are like, is it this? Is it $500? Is it this? Or it's like you're constantly asking these questions. As the owner of your own practice, the problem that we have is you don't realize that your brain is taking you through a series of your own questions to ultimately bring you to the end result. So what happens is you start to bring someone on and say, oh man, why is my team not making this? Why is the outcome not the same as what I would have done? Well, because you didn't give them the information. So as you catch yourself going through a series of natural questions in your head, we use a system called Miro. It's Miro, absolutely obsessed with it. Miro is a great way to actually map out. So you start off with your first question. Is this whatever it would be? Let's just say, is this over $500? Yes or no? And it stems out. And then you have two boxes. Then it's this, then it's that, or it keeps going all the way down to however far. Same with onboarding. Like if you have rules and expectations around the people that you want to onboard, a lot of the times firm owners are scared to bring someone on to make the final decision on if we're going to bring that client on. The problem is because you're going through a series of steps in your head. So how can we take that out of your brain, put it somewhere and say, okay, is the person a good human being that you talk to on the phone? Yes or no? And then the next step would be, are they a good culture fit for our company itself? Yes or no? Are they making this amount of revenue? Yes or no? Are they actually within the industry we support? All the way down to the end result, which means deny or accept. And utilizing those tools allow you to get out of your head the exact information that if you were to walk away from your business, someone else can pick up and just follow it along.
That's really interesting because I think one of the most challenging aspects, that we've seen in our interview process for firm owners to let go of is kind of the consultation, the prospect review. And that's why, because they might have documented the processes, they might have documented the workflows or checklists, but they haven't documented essentially the decision tree for very nuanced things in their firm, like what makes a good client versus not a good client, or specific tax use cases. And that tool is called Miro, Miro.
Yep. Mm-hmm. You can also use, if you're a Google Drive user, it does have Google Draw, which I believe if you already have it, it's free with it. And it makes it easy to make little boxes. Miro is just that on steroids. Okay. And the colors.
Amazing. Well, something you mentioned, in the interview form that I thought was pretty fascinating. Obviously, again, I'm in tech. I look at software tools all day long. I'm going to look up Miro. I've heard a lot of good things about it in advance of this interview, so now's the time. But, you mentioned something that, folks need to think about, processes beyond the project management software, beyond technology. So unpack that a little bit for me. What do you mean by that?
So essentially what happens is you start off with your practice, everything's on a piece of paper, everything's pencil, it's all in your head. Then you get to a point where you start to scale a little bit, start to bring on clients. Then you realize that I can't do this all in my head. So then that's when the project management system starts to roll out, and it just becomes your piece of paper in a system that allows it to be more on autopilot, just like Jetpack Workflow, recurring things like whatever it needs. So you don't have to remember what needs to be done next again. Then you get to this point where you start to say, okay, the system is working great. And then you start to really scale. And then you look back and say, there's the operational side. There's the actual project management piece, which yes, your system tells you what to do, but nobody's there to say, how can we really maintain all of these clients realistically and not just sign a bunch of people on without really understanding the level of work, the tracking the time, hiring your team, hiring, offboarding, firing. There's so many other parts that are of the system. And the system is like an iceberg. It is just the tip. And what's underneath is the strong SOPs, the decision trees, the mind maps, the building out a team that actually is supporting you and always futuristic and activators and so much more than the project management system.
So I think, if I'm listening right now as a firm owner, I might be getting really jazzed up about workflow process tools, but then at the same time, it feels very overwhelming, right? There's
sure.
onboarding, offboarding your team, there's operational processes, there's SOPs on your service delivery, there's client onboarding or client prospecting. How do you start? How do you start without just crying immediately? Like, what is the best way to kind of step into this universe or continue to evolve? Is there kind of a way, only take on one piece a month? Is there kind of a framework approach to doing this?
Yeah. So one of the first questions I always ask anybody is, what is the most important thing that is whether an issue or something you don't like to do? Let's try to get that off of your plate and try to create some sort of a process. One of the number one processes that most people want me to help them with is literally onboarding, month-end close and onboarding. And that's obviously because there is some sort of a trend of how many moving parts and pieces there actually are. And that's where we start with Miro for everything, then bring into the project management system is just it's literally like taking sticky notes and throwing around and reorganizing them and then bring it into your system. The problem is sometimes we hop into these systems and we think that the system's going to solve the problem versus you have to understand the foundational aspect. But start with the process that really bogs you down and then just kind of build on it. But don't allow your mental state tell you this is overwhelming. This is not right. I'm not doing right. It might be wrong. Guess what? Do the process as it's messy and you will start to find the issues. While you're already doing the thing, film yourself doing it via Loom. Just film yourself. Go back, watch yourself doing it and write out exactly what you just did. There's tools like Scribe that could take screen pictures while you're going through your process and can help you capture them and you can write stuff out and stuff. Using tools like that, just getting started. And then your systems will grow as you grow as well.
That's Scribe How? Is that what you
Scribe
mentioned?
How. Yeah.
Alyssa, I feel like the more I talk to you, we're going to have like this kind of like checklist of cool tools never before mentioned on the Growing Your Firm podcast. So we'll be sure to be linking these up in the podcast notes as well. Now, when you mentioned onboarding, is that client onboarding or team onboarding or both?
I think it's both. Yeah. Like when it comes to team onboarding, the best part and the best advice I can give to anybody is when you're onboarding your team member, one part of our process is we tell this new team member, by the way, you have this column, like let's say in our project management system, anytime you're getting trained and at one point you feel like you're lacking whatever information or you're lacking knowledge around something, drop it as a task inside of this column. And what we do after every team onboarding, we go back and say, clearly they identified that we didn't give them enough info about our program, like whatever it would be, right? And having to say, how can we fit that in for the next person who gets hired? So you ask them and you set the tone and say, help me help you and help the next person after you, because that's what we're all about is the efficiency side of things.
And how often are you checking in with that new team member? Is that a weekly review with them, a bi-weekly review on what they're adding to that list?
Usually it's just weekly. I actually only do the first initial session with our employees. And that's usually setting the tone of the company, like showing my passion, like what I'm really doing here. And then my operations manager takes over and she does weekly calls with them, I think every Wednesday, up into the point where they feel extremely confident. And sometimes it's 2 months, 3 months. And that coaching calls for them to absorb questions throughout the week as they're working and to bring them to that meeting. And so we can expand on it. But usually the ops manager does that. And she reviews all the tasks and stuff that we need to make improvements on.
Yeah, Alyssa, you just made me think of something that's going to take us a little bit off script, so we'll see where it goes. But is your current company fully remote, and was your prior firm fully remote?
Yes, both were fully remote. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can't help but think, the competitive advantage, anybody that puts together processes publicly, and by publicly, I just mean in the cloud that's easily accessible. And I'm not saying publish it on your website or whatever it may be, because the talent war is real for accounting and bookkeeping firms that we're filming this middle of summer in 2021. And there isn't a day that goes by where I don't hear from a firm owner that's struggling to hire in their local geography. And it feels like this is such a big unlock for you. If you ever want to hire remotely, this is where it starts.
Yeah. And that's we're actually going through a struggle with, and I think a lot of business owners are struggling to find people, to bring onto their team. Like we're hiring a full-time position right now, salary plus benefits. We pay for your birthday off. like we're really big on like taking care of our people, and we just can't get people to come in, which we never usually have that problem. We usually get some solid applicants. And right now I think every business is really struggling and being virtual, but we do have a bit more advantage because I have more expansion on who we can hire within the US versus businesses that are brick and mortar who only have a small pool. I think that's, yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how even firms that are going back full-time in office or approaching hybrid, but they want to stay local, how they might need to start augmenting their staff with folks outside of their town, outside of their state. And it's something we're going through. It's something that even as a remote firm like you're going through as well. But I think it becomes exponentially harder if you don't have like a transparent process in place where you can onboard remote team members.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely a big piece, is making sure they're set up right. And there's systems, not to throw another tool out there, but Member Vault allows you to have your own online program, or, you can actually sell it, I think up to 50 people for free. I'm not sure if they've updated that, but the reason I'm mentioning this is because one of the new pieces, as we went through and saw what our last employee was hired from, one piece was like, I wish that I would have had more videos on the actual encompassing company, how we do our processes. We have to train them on all these different things. And my operations manager was like, why don't we build out our own course for our team? And I was just like, you are so brilliant. This is why you got hired. And so now that's something that's on her plate, to try to build this out. And it's easy. Film yourself doing all the stuff, throw it into a free software that allows you to do your own program, make them check it off. You can add quizzes at the bottom and quiz your team to make sure they're actually absorbing what it is. And this doesn't have to be a long drawn out project. Just throw it in there and then organize it later. I'm always about done is better than perfect.
Yeah. Well, tell me a little bit about your ops manager. You've mentioned this individual a couple of times. They seem very instrumental to allow you to do a lot of the creative, innovative stuff that you do, the sales and marketing stuff that you do. And this person, really seems to block and tackle kind of the day-to-day stuff. So what are they responsible for? And then how are you managing this individual? What's the communication channel, with them?
Yeah. So her name, fun fact, is actually Alyssa.
Okay.
So there's now two of us.
Yeah.
She was highly recommended by someone when I was on the hunt for originally just an assistant, someone to support me here as this company grew. And I interviewed her. She was super sweet. She was like, people call me a Disney princess. I'm like, you're hired right now. You can't see me, but I am all about the color over here. She was super smart, very energetic, really wanted to be there at the interview process and stuff like that. So I onboarded her. She's only been with the team since January 5th. So she hasn't been with the company very long. Within 2 months, I actually was like, you know what? You are like the perfect right-hand woman for me. Like, would you love to step into this role? Like, we're about to hire someone new. And she was all about it. Never stepped into a role like that. She's never been virtual, never knew any of the softwares we ever used, none of this. Wow. And I just absorbed it like a sponge so fast. It was incredible to watch. And she was able to just absorb my brain as well with like what processes and information we had. And now at this point, what she is doing, she's maintaining all the team. She's also maintaining me and making sure that I do what I need to be doing. And so that's pretty nice to not always have to think to be the one to say to do the thing. And she goes in every day, checks in for anything that needs approvals, anything that needs that's stalled, anything that needs to be, given more information for each of our team members. She handles the contractors. She maintains pretty much our whole team and makes sure that the communication is there. I recently took 3.5 weeks of unplugged vacation. When I went to Vegas, actually twice during that time, I didn't work one day, and she handled the whole company while I was gone. She even hopped on our IG stories, hopped in, did student videos. Like, she handled it all and made sure the team was on top of it while I was gone.
And what is your cadence for touching base with her? Is this a live huddle you're doing with her every day? Is it just asynchronously through email or chat? Like, how are you two staying in sync?
Yeah. So we use Slack at our team here, and we keep all of our channels organized. With me and my ops manager, we have a private channel called training management. And that's mostly for her to, especially when there's confidential stuff, we need to just communicate as management. So we'll go in there, we'll have conversations, but every single Wednesday, we have an hour call together that's just dedicated to us. And that's usually every single Wednesday. And today she's actually going to be on a call with our newest copywriter and also our new HR department, that our company that we just hired, because now she's always on the initial calls. So then I don't have to be on the rest of them. So setting the tone. So it's as often as we possibly need to. Yesterday, we hopped on a call to nerd out over a new system we're trying to roll out.
And what's the agenda for the 1 hour meeting you have weekly? Is it kind of project updates? Is it personal check-in? Is it a mixture of both? What does that look like?
Well, first, we always talk about what's happening in life and all the different things. And then the first thing we tackle is we start off with the questions that she's accumulated over the week. So we started to recently roll out Notion as a way to kind of put Google Docs and Google Sheets on steroids. And with that, every single week, she's in charge of favoriting a specific page that talks about the next week's meeting. And as things come up, she just goes into that page. So she's not constantly pinging me on Slack, like every 5 minutes, sucking up my time. Instead, it's like, just accumulate your questions and also some answers that you feel would be for this. So she's thinking through the process. By the time she gets to Wednesday, sometimes she's like, I figured out that main little piece. Unless it's an emergency, of course, we need her to ask it immediately. But typically it's about the team. She goes through everybody's time tracking every single Monday to ensure we're all spending our time efficiently. So she just comes to me with an update. We talk about the budget. We talk about concerns or anything that's kind of happening. Right now, we're planning a in-person retreat in Nashville. I finally get to meet my team in real life. And we're going through a lot of that with everything that's happening. We need an update on holistically what's happening in the company.
Yeah, amazing. Alyssa, we covered so much ground here today. I'm sure the listeners will probably want to reach out, say thank you, learn more about everything that you're doing. If they want to connect with you, what is the best place for them to go to and just learn more about everything that you're doing for the community?
Yeah, so you can actually find me at Workflow Queen on Instagram. I do a lot of behind the scenes. I actually show you a lot of my processes and stuff. So definitely follow me there. And then also our website, which is workflowqueen.com.
That's amazing. By the way, was it hard to get workflowqueen.com?
No, actually, I wanted to be Workflow Ninja, but it was taken and I was so sad. But then one day when someone found out, once my name started to get out there, some guy was like, messaged me on Facebook and was like, I heard you're the Workflow Queen. I need some help at my firm. This is when we used to do like one-on-one setups for firms. And I was like, ooh, I kind of like that. And it just stuck. Yeah.
I can't believe you got the .com. I can't believe it wasn't taken already. I didn't know, when I asked, I was expecting, well, we had to dish out a lot of money. It was a negotiation, but wow, you just thought of it. You got the domain. I mean,
we're in the trademark process too, because it's been quite a mission over here. I didn't think it was going to be a thing either.
That's amazing. Well, if you're listening, go check out workflowqueen.com. Go check Alyssa out on Instagram as well. If you were listening to this, you couldn't jot down all the tips, tools, and tactics that Alyssa talked about today. We're going to link everything up at jetpackworkflow.com/blog, jetpackworkflow.com/blog. If you enjoyed this interview, share it with a fellow farm owner that is going through some of the challenges that we talked about today. If you really loved it, leave a review on iTunes or Spotify, wherever you're listening to this podcast. Helps us get the word out. Alyssa, thanks again for coming on.
Yeah, thank you.